The guy with long hair could not realize what had just happened. At that time, the commander asked the protagonist how he got the information. The hero said he would not explain any more, and said that since they were comrades, they should trust each other. The big man laughed, while the reckless boy assumed that this was no ordinary fallen man. The long-haired boy said that you shouldn't treat the fallen as humans. The protagonist asked the wag's brother to get the key from the fallen man's belly. The big man went behind the back of the long-haired guy and said that this job was just right for him. The long-haired guy reached into his jacket and pulled out a bunch of tools. The system was surprised at this and said entertainment is an art. These knives allowed the guy to dismember a corpse delicately, like a cook in the kitchen. Also, these knives were not Jilin. The system said that doors require a key and asked the hero a question: do all doors in this world require a key? The system reminded him that what was happening in this hospital was before the Tower era. The protagonist began to think about the fact that an ordinary hospital turned into a location, and locations can't be destroyed. The whole world was covered with serious rules. That's why the building didn't collapse, and there are doors without a key that can't be opened. At that time, the long-haired guy had already finished with his case and notified the others. The long-haired guy showed the key and said they could go. They were in the air corridor of the second building. The protagonist pondered over the fact that the owner of Talent 75 had been taken to the 6th floor, and he already had 2 Talents 76 and 24. The protagonist came to the conclusion that he shouldn't talk about it. The commander asked what Bai Wu was thinking about. The protagonist wondered why the fallen wouldn't leave the building. If they could get in, they could get out. The commander explained that there was no answer to this question. It was just that the fallen were tied to one place. The commander concluded that the location cannot be destroyed, and the monsters inside it are tied to this place. The commander said that the tethering of the monsters was not proven, so there was no need to take the risk of invoking it. Crazy Boy said that he feels that there are no enemies in the third building. The commander asked the hero's opinion on this. The system said that of all the parts of the hospital, only here were people who left boring notes. The system also warned that the poor thing paid attention to him and left some clues in the third building. The system asked if the protagonist would leave or continue on his way risking his life. The protagonist told the long-haired guy to open the door, and the system didn't understand his choice. The guy inserted the key into the socket, and with a little twist the door opened and the team started to move forward. The system warned the hero, even at the entrance, it is written that the passage is forbidden. The system continued to urge the hero to stop, but he not only continued on his way, but ignored her. The system told them that this enclosure is full of the poor man's resentments. The system suggested that they should move to the third floor, at which time the team saw that the elevator was working. The protagonist thought that they could use the teleportation disc to get back, but the poor thing can't get out of the fourth building. The long-haired man asked why the protagonist pressed the third floor. The protagonist said there would be a clue on the third floor, and the commander said he felt like the hero had been here before and demanded an explanation. The protagonist said that he doesn't like to explain anything. The hero decided to tell because the captain asked him to. When they were on the 11th floor of the first building, the guys heard the call of the fallen. The hero went to look for the source and went into a room in the corner. The hero explained that he heard a completely different voice than the guys because his emotions were at 0. The others were surprised, and the captain wondered what the hero had found in that room. The protagonist said that he had to choose 2 things out of 3, and he chose the diary and the comb. Longshot asked why the protagonist didn't choose the key. The protagonist explained his choice by saying that the key might have been too dangerous a choice. The commander assumed that all of the protagonist's knowledge was from the diary. The protagonist said that it was, and all the information was from the diary. When asked where the diary was, the hero said that after reading it, it disappeared. The protagonist said that only a comb was left, but it too would disappear after the mission was completed. Longhaired could not believe that the hero had enough time in the room to memorize everything, and he said that it is natural because they are an elite team. After saying that, they all slumped, as they couldn't memorize so much in such a short period of time. The elevator arrived at the desired floor. The commander asked about what else was written in the diary. The hero said that the clue is on the 3rd floor, and the commander was surprised that this is all. The protagonist said that there was other information, but he would tell you about it when he had to use it. The hero looked at the team and said that everyone should have their own responsibilities. The hero said that his position is the eyes, so the team should not doubt his words. The protagonist said that explaining everything is fine, but not for the team in which there should be complete trust. At that time the girl with blue hair heard a voice. The poor girl said she Xela after her sister. Looking at the source of the sound, she saw nothing, and decided that it was just an illusion. After a moment, the girl's face became distorted, as the crew members disappeared and everything around her began to change. The girl began to scream and call for the captain. But the poor girl's voice suggested that her sister had come to play with her. The girl with blue hair couldn't move or even breathe. She almost lost consciousness, and a hand appeared behind her back. It was the captain who told her to calm down. The girl said she heard something, and the captain started to instruct her to calm down. The commander told the guys that if they heard a voice, they should report it, as it might be some kind of spiritual attack. The protagonist explained that the poor thing's arsenal includes many techniques, not just the hands they saw in the first building. The protagonist showed the vault and advised them not to read anything, as then they would experience the same horror as the patients they asked about. The protagonist and the team went inside. The big man said that thanks to the hero's information, they were not being tortured. The system said that the books really shouldn't be read, as you can feel the pain to the fullest. The commander asked if they could read the documents, but the hero said that they were also stories that studied the fallen. The protagonist said that there might not be any information about the appearance of the fallen, but some specifics could be found. The long-haired guy said that it shouldn't be hard for someone with zero emotional state to read anything. The main character told his team to stand still and don't move. He notified the guys that he was going to start reading the archives. The hero started reading. At one experiment there was a problem, and the doctors decided to ask for help. Although the director forbade to contact that man, he was a genius in the industry of the fallen. Before calling for help, he decided to strengthen Dingjio so that he wouldn't oisikize that person. He dialed the liquid into a syringe, took the girl's hand, and began injecting the contents directly into her vein. The doctor shined the flashlight directly into her eyes, while the hero regretted not feeling emotions as the information he received became less. On April 9th, the doctor was disappointed as he wanted to instill the girl with rites of passage, and as a result, scales started to appear on her skin. The doctor did not understand how to control the development of the fallen, and the hero assumed that Ilya's mutation was caused by a similar method. The man from the memories began to tear out his scales. The protagonist didn't understand why he was doing it, but he kept tearing off the scales one by one. The protagonist's voice did not reach this man. At the time, the guys were trying to wake up the hero. The big man said that the hero really couldn't hear anything. The long-haired guy said that the new guy was very interesting and asked where the captain found him. The captain asked if the guys remembered the slave from the survival game case. The man started to remember. It seemed to be a survival game arranged by the aristocrats. The commander told the guys that the hero was that slave. The commander told another detail. Then it was the first time the hero came out of the tower, but now it was just the second. The commander said that the hero had survived in the blue zone for 2 hours. The big man was dumbfounded that a man who had been outside the tower had survived 2 hours in the blue zone. The commander said that moreover, a man was sent there to kill Bai Wu. But the hero used the fallen man to deal with his enemy. Then he found the teleportation disc and used it. The long-haired guy couldn't believe such a story, as that place was hellishly difficult. There was no way to survive there. The blue-haired girl assumed that Bai Wu was missing some emotion since it was not realistic otherwise. This was their most reasonable explanation. The long-haired guy didn't care as long as the hero was on their side, and the big man asked how the captain knew the hero's whereabouts. The commander revealed that a woman had called him and told him of the hero's whereabouts. She told the commander to find Bai Wu first and get ahead of the aristocrats. A little while later, the hero regained consciousness. The commander was sure that the woman who called him was at least an aristocrat. The protagonist noticed that the guys were discussing him. The commander talked about the things that caught his attention in the hero. The reckless guy said that he immediately realized that the protagonist was as interested as he was. The commander said that Bai Wu doesn't really feel fear, he could only feel interest. The big man asked what they would do if the woman suddenly wanted to take Bai Wu away. The commander made an important look and said that no one would ever be able to take his men away. A smile appeared on Bai Wu's face. The system called the protagonist shameless for eavesdropping, and said that even though the team is all ugly, they are also nice in their own way. The protagonist turned to the guys and asked how much time had passed. The commander said it had been 40 minutes and asked if the protagonist had learned something or not. The protagonist said that he had learned something, but it wasn't very important information. Bai Wu was determined to continue reading and asked the team to wait for him. The world around the hero started to change again. The hero realized that the records began to be kept from 2023. The Fallen already existed, and in this place, they were trying to create a Fallen that could be controlled. The man conducting the experiment was determined to hurry, because in a year the whole world would be overrun by monsters. Elijah's teacher was mentioned in some of the records. Towers weren't supposed to appear yet, but Ilya mentioned a tower, so the hero assumed it was some other one. The hero was concerned about where the Fallen came from, how people got into the tower, and the documents didn't have any information on these questions. The hero intended to look at the next entry, a silhouette appeared behind him. The protagonist could not return to reality, and now the guy seemed completely immobilized. Behind the back, the girl asked the protagonist a question. Why can't a man without scales find a girl? The protagonist said that he lied, as he thought that the man didn't need to suffer so much for having some scales. The girl said the guy was lying. He said he wouldn't lie about such information and gave his name. The girl started yelling that he was lying. Although from the outside the girl seemed harmless, but inside she was a lot of anger and resentment, the hero decided to pretend to be weak. The protagonist explained that turning into a freak was irreversible, and at least he had a better chance of survival. The protagonist decided to pretend to be the poor thing himself. The protagonist should not believe her harmless appearance, as she is most likely the strongest fallen person in the hospital. In the archive, the entries are pulled into other spaces, as this girl wanted the readers to feel people's pain. The protagonist recalled the task of choosing an object and said he chose a comb, even though he believes it never existed. There was silence, only a terrible pressure appeared. In the real world, the hero's body was covered with an aura. The commander assumed that Bai Wu had gotten to the bottom of it. The girl asked why the guy had chosen the hairbrush. The hero confessed that it was just a gut feeling. The protagonist said that he thought the other items didn't have the best memories. The protagonist also said that the hairbrush is not a weapon of torture, so it is impossible to inflict pain with it. The protagonist saw a large number of syringes, saw a camera on the wall for surveillance, saw a strong cage and shackles. The comb didn't seem to fit in that place. The protagonist said that the thing had an air of tenderness about it. The protagonist suggested that there was a person who loved her when she was a child, and it was she who combed the girl's hair to take care of her. The protagonist talked about how when people are faced with something they can't handle, they remember the warm past. The protagonist admitted that he didn't know what the girl had been through, but after going through the patient's memories, he realized that the girl had been through a living hell. The protagonist assumed that the girl was desperate. She remembered another man, but he did not come. In this place there were only monsters and evil people. The girl said the guy was lying. The protagonist assumed that the girl thought he was afraid. He dispelled such speculation by saying that he is different from other people, so he is not afraid and does not hate the girl. He came to find out what happened in the past. The hero said that the girl herself should feel that he is not afraid. He said that people live in the tower, and in the outside world it is difficult for them to survive. The protagonist talked about how he was recently thrown outside the tower, and that the temperature in that place was over 70 degrees, and he almost died. The protagonist could become a fallen man if he died. He said that a girl could kill him, but he wants to die in clarity. The protagonist introduced himself as Bai Wu and asked if he could ask some questions to the girl. She introduced herself as Han Yin. The protagonist was happy that the girl was slowly starting to trust him, and this time he wouldn't die on the spot. The protagonist was interested in the pattern on the girl's neck and asked what it was, as he had seen someone with the same pattern before. The girl assumed that the hero was curious to know why she didn't kill that fallen man and what happened to the others. The hero nodded in agreement. She said the protagonist would be scared of her. She said the hero would be scared of her. As soon as he saw her, his lies would be exposed. The protagonist said they could test it. He said if the girl was right, he was willing to die. She stared at the guy and then closed her eyes and stretched her hand forward, activating magic. The hero found himself on the 11th floor of the first building. The protagonist noticed the differences from the place he was in. The diary, comb, and key disappeared, and a medical card appeared on the table. It seemed to the hero that the answer to the poor woman's situation was inside, but as soon as he opened the card, spirits flew out of there and started sucking the hero inside. There the man screamed in pain. It seemed that from such a sound his throat was ready to explode. This horror was watched by a girl who was worried about her uncle. The man began to beg the girl for help, though his voice was barely audible. He was begging to be taken away from here, and the girl felt very sorry for him. A little later, the girl heard the news that one of the patients had turned into a fallen man. Her uncle is now no longer human, and is now a fallen man. The doctor said he didn't know why. The girl was very sad that her uncle was gone, and he would no longer be able to tell her stories. The girl saw Yin again in the black room she had made for him. Although she promised to make a colored room, it seemed that the girl had only 3 colors left: black, white, red. Xiaoan told the girl that his bones pierced his body. She assumed that the boy had also become a monster. The girl was upset. She wanted to support the boy, but she couldn't. Later the boy came to say goodbye. He begged to be let go. The girl started crying a lot, and the doctor decided that she was too emotional and injected her with a tranquilizer. Afterwards, she heard the doctors talking about Ding Shi turning into a fallen man. The spots on the girl's arms grew larger, and another crack appeared on her forehead. The guy didn't want to stay in this place either. Even though they see each other, he has to fight with other fallen ones. Every time they met, the girl saw the guy's new scars. She said that if they never saw each other again, she would miss him very much. The doctor started to have a mess, as a lot of people started to lose their minds. The girl was very worried about the guy, even though she believed he was strong. The girl's body continued to transform. The girl's forehead hurt incredibly badly. She felt like she had an eye in her forehead. The hero was thinking about the fact that all the test subjects who had become half-fallen had lost their minds en masse and had become completely fallen. And all of this was somehow connected to the girl. Every test subject had dreamed of her before becoming a fallen. They had known her before, but it was in her dreams that she tried to create a better world for the boys. True, the poor thing's abilities were limited, and the comforts she gave didn't save their lives. They couldn't live such a life, and one by one, they started to give up. At that time the girl began to take them away. She absorbed resentments and suffering. The result was that the subjects lost their will. The girl recorded all the suffering before they stopped fighting. You could say the poor girl sealed them up. At that time it was the 9th of the month. The girl could not look in the mirror, as her whole body was covered with eyes. The girl had no regrets as she was trying to protect people, but it looks like she would soon lose her humanity too. Her hair was falling out. There were all signs that she would soon turn into a fallen man. The girl asked the doctors many times to take care of her, but to them, she was just a monster. She cried because she was turning into a real monster, because she was becoming a monster that no one loved. On the 10th, the girl's transformation was complete. The voices in Fallen's head told her to kill them all and lock them up. She broke the chain, and breaking the gate she set out to kill people. People tried to run and ask for help from outside, but it was impossible since she froze everything. The girl was determined to play a game with the doctors in which they have to hide. Now the girl was losing her mind and felt like she could finally interact with people in some way. All the people who saw the girl were yelling and screaming for help. The girl smiled as people cried with an interesting flavor coming out of her body that gave her a huge appetite. A little later the girl met Ilya. She fought him time after time as he never gave up. Ilya did not want to lose, as he was waiting for his teacher. The girl envied the guy as she too wanted to have a man who could love her. Void hoped that Ilya would be able to wait and shared some of her power with him. It seemed to the girl that because of her the teacher had given up on Ilya and she blamed herself. After a few more days, almost all the doctors were either eaten or became one of them. The voices of all her friends were screaming in her head, making her want to kill people. The girl didn't really want to kill people, but they were all afraid of her since she was a monster. Even though everyone hated the girl, she didn't hate them. She just wanted to play with someone at least. The hero finished reading the story. Now it was clear to the hero why the system called the girl a poor child. This child had experienced the suffering of everyone in this hospital. Even after the mutation remained a kind child. The hero felt sorry for the girl, but then the system spoke. It said that soon the poor girl's thoughts will fall on her again. The hero saw the girl's stats. She was a level 9 fallen. She had a mental power mutation, hate seal, hate change, and hate increase. The system warned that the hero would never in his life be able to defeat a level 9 fallen, so fighting was not an option. The system tried to suggest an answer, but it was quickly suppressed. The heroes still remained in the room with the team. They were concerned that it had been a very long time. The commander warned the guys. It would soon be 4 hours since they left the tower. Within a moment of saying that, the guys stirred. The girl with blue hair felt her legs turn leaden. It was interfering with the deceleration. The big man felt his arms become exhausted. It was a hindrance of reducing the attack. The boy with long hair felt depressed. This was the hindrance of negative thinking. The reckless boy lost his eyesight. It was the hindrance of losing his vision. The commander knew that every 4 hours a new debuff appeared, but grief and blindness were usually rare and appeared on the 3rd time. The commander's hindrance was a flash of anger. He asked Ding Wuzhui and Shang Xiaoyi to return to the tower as they were a hindrance. The long-haired guy started crying and calling himself mediocre. He continued to cry and whine, suppressing the mood of the team. The commander was angry and ordered him to disappear as soon as possible. The clueless boy told the captain to be careful and pulled out an item to take back to the tower. The boys disappeared, and the bigger one turned to the captain to see if the hero could handle it. The man was worried because while the hero was stuck there, they didn't know what kind of debuff was on him. At that time a dark aura began to fill the room. The guys noticed that something was wrong with the documents. The commander ordered everyone to gather around the protagonist. The team was surrounded on all sides by a black aura. The guys got into a fighting stance and were intent on defending the hero. Suddenly a fallen man appeared and attacked the huge man, but he was able to block the attack. Looking closely, he remembered the fallen attacker. It was the same one the captain had fought. It turned out that all the fallen that appeared were the ones they had previously dealt with. The big man said it was all because of the captain's angry outburst. A bolt of lightning flew by and cut off a fallen's arm. It was the captain who sliced off the heads of the enemies at incredible speed. The huge man was very surprised at the captain's strength. He stepped on the part of the fallen that remained and it dispersed. The commander ordered the guys to protect the protagonist while he was killing the fallen. A new fallen appeared, and the commander assumed that the hero had found something incredible. And at that time the protagonist was dumbfounded. He found himself in an unknown place with many doors. He could move through that space, but the number of doors shocked him. The system appeared for a while, and explained that this space was connected to all the records. The disturbance that caught up with the hero was confusion. The system explained that the orientation was distorted by 65 degrees, and this debuff would interfere greatly. The protagonist only needed to find the right door. The system upset the guy that there were more than 100 such doors in space, and only one door could lead the hero to reality. The protagonist decided to get out of the deadlock. He walked into one of the doors, where most of the space was filled with empty space. The protagonist held out a hairbrush and said he didn't fool the girl. He explained that he had come to this world recently and treated the fallen differently. The protagonist explained that even now, he was not afraid of the girl. She asked if it was true that the protagonist wasn't afraid of her. The hero expressed his regret that the girl had no one to comb her hair. The protagonist explained that there are many things beyond the walls of the hospital, and decided to tell why the tower people are afraid of the fallen. The hero explained that there was no research to prove that humans were more bloodthirsty than the fallen. Ilya was the one the humans led using his loyalty. The hero said that the girl was different. She accepted most of the test subjects of this hospital and considered them friends. The protagonist couldn't even imagine how hard it was for her to bear the many resentments accumulated in her body. The hero said that since she was able to retain her will, she was still a human being and not a monster worth hating. At that time, the captain dealt with another fallen. The big man reported that the fallen's hatred had dissolved. The captain assumed that Bai Wu had done well. The protagonist advised the girl not to let herself be turned into a monster, and said that the world beyond is vast. He said that the girl could have seen a lot since she is incredibly kind. In a sad voice, the girl replied that she couldn't leave this place. The protagonist said that he would definitely find a way to free the girl from that place. He said that if the girl is willing to trust him and wait. Suddenly voices started to appear in the girl's head that ordered to kill the protagonist. She said that the protagonist was not lying to her. The protagonist watched her and looked up and said that she and the girl looked something alike. The hero said that they are both abandoned in this world that they know nothing about. The hero has a mission to uncover all the secrets outside the tower. The protagonist had a lot of questions about this world, and all of them he wanted to know the answer to. The protagonist promised that once he found all the answers, he would come for the girl to free her. She couldn't understand why the guy would do that. The protagonist said that she was not alone, because from today she had a friend who could finally play with the girl. She started crying after what she heard. The girl thanked the protagonist for that, and advised her not to go to the fourth building. The girl said that if they get close to her, she won't be able to control herself. She advised the hero to become as strong as the captain, and then go to her. The protagonist said he would definitely do that. He promised that at the next meeting they would play together. The protagonist clarified that it would be regardless of how the girl would turn out. The girl said that the protagonist should look in the first building before he left, because a man had come there 2 days ago and left some things there. The protagonist really knew that a few days ago there were traces of blood left there. Thinking about the possible identity of the person, the protagonist assumed that it was the same teacher. The protagonist asked what the person was doing. The girl said she didn't know, but the thing he had was similar to the one that returns to the tower. The protagonist thought about all the options about why leave such a thing here. The protagonist asked the girl to take him to the place. She agreed, and the hero came out of his trance. The commander noticed that the hero took a long time to deal with the last document. Not only the fallen, but also the rest of the documents had disappeared from the room. The commander asked the hero to tell what he had discovered. The guy briefly told that he found the document of the subject from the fourth corps. The hero said that in the fourth corps they will not be able to cope, but the big man said that the guy should not underestimate the captain. The man began to praise the captain, calling him the strongest. The protagonist explained that if you took all the fallen of the hospital, they were unable to damage the fallen of the fourth corps. The commander was surprised that the hero was so sure of this, and asked what happened inside the document. The protagonist said he would tell you on the way. Before continuing on his way, the hero asked where 2 members of the team had gone. The hero was told that they were sent back due to debuffs, and asked what the hero's handicap was. The protagonist said he was lucky, and it was just confusion. The commander asked how long it took to adapt, and the hero told them that he changed his routine almost immediately. The guys were surprised, and the girl with blue hair asked where they were going. The hero told about a man who came here and left one thing in the first building. The big man asked the captain if they really weren't going to building 4. He said they were not going there. Before the tower era, the fallen had already started appearing all over the world. To find the cause of the fallen, many people started researching, eventually creating fallen. The big man was surprised by such information. After all, they should have researched the fallen, not created them. The protagonist didn't know the exact reasons, but there are at least 2 test subjects almost succeeding. The commander assumed that the Spider-Man was one of them, and the hero said that the Spider-Man and the girl from Corp 4 were half successful. The commander asked why the girl was also half successful. She was stronger than the spider after all. The hero said that the girl absorbed the suffering of other people, which eventually made her fallen. The hero said that even though she became a fallen, the girl's goodness didn't go away. The captain said that the fallen are fallen, their nature is to kill people, and no matter how kind or sad they seem, as long as they are fallen they are enemies of humanity. The protagonist agreed with the captain's words, and thought about finding a way to turn her back into a human, or at least get rid of her bloodthirstiness. Suddenly the hero's face changed. The image of a girl appeared in front of him. The commander asked the hero what happened, and he said nothing. It turned out that the girl's spirit could only see the hero. The girl was a little angry because of the conversation with the captain. The hero was now sure that the whole hospital was part of the girl. They came in, and the fallen one pointed her finger toward a passageway. The hero went in there, and really saw something lying on a table. The hero assumed that the thing had been left there on purpose to be found. The guys thought that the thing really looked like a teleportation disc, but the captain rejected their arguments. It was a traveling disc, of which there were only 7 in the world. With this thing you could return to a location that was placed within 3 days. It was a stranger's invitation. There were bloody records lying on the floor. The protagonist paid attention to the text. There was a string of documents, and the poor girl's story was just the beginning. The protagonist wondered what kind of invitation it was. The commander asked why the protagonist was smiling. The protagonist said he was glad they were coming back, and asked to be allowed to take the disc as a souvenir. The commander agreed to give the disc to the hero. The commander said it was time for them to go back, as there was nothing more to explore. He took out a teleportation circle, and he and the others started to disappear. The girl looked at the hero with very sad eyes, but he smiled and said that they would see each other again. The system rated the completion of the task as SOSO, and the girl daubed her friend goodbye. The hero disappeared, and the girl sat in her subconscious along with her hairbrush. She smiled and waited for the moment when the hero returned.